Hey little monsters, this little monster girl Desi, coming at ya. And it's been a hot minute since I've recorded something, huh? Sorry about that. I've been pretty busy with a few other things. And if you haven't noticed, I'm also renovating my channel and the layout of my videos. So I hope you guys will bear with me. That being said, in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my DearFellowTraveler characters. Or at least the main cast. And since I've refined their characters since then, I thought I'd make an update video. I'll talk a bit about their characters and what went behind their designs and everything. So, with all that said, on to the video. Alright, so to give you guys a quick refresher, the world of DearFellowTraveler is told from different points of view, and with different settings similar to found letters or journal entries, which means each chapter can be written differently depending on who's telling it. This also includes longer chapters or short stories that are just one-shots, but still plan to be focused on 4 main characters. And the first one I'll talk about is Tawny Big Bear. There were a few things that went into Tawny's design, from the way she dresses as well as her personality. In her first concept, Tawny was somebody who was so lazy that she was always late to everything, which means she always had to be rushing. As you can see, she was also pretty skinny. But in the more refined design, which I'm drawing right now, Tawny takes on more of the personality and the appearance of a bear, which both suits her name and her skinwalker. In her first design, she ended up being skinny just because that was kind of how my style translated. And up until that point, I didn't have a lot of chubby characters, so my default was just to make her skinny. And while she does still look very cute in that style, it doesn't really scream bear, now does it? But putting that aside, I've definitely put a lot more thought into this design. And I've refined it to the point where I think it suits her pretty well. Tawny is still a very lazy person, but she's also really motivated when she wants to be. Her mindset basically is, if I get this done right now, I won't have to be bugged about it when I'm trying to be lazy. So despite being a very lazy person, she doesn't procrastinate when she knows she has a job to do. Which I think fits a bear pretty well. Because while bears are shown to be pretty lazy and just kind of lay around all day in a lot of different stories, I like to think that they are pretty motivated creatures. Because let's face it, getting a lot of extra food during the fall time in order to get super fat for winter time probably takes a lot of work. Clothing wise, I wanted to give her a very simple outfit. Kind of to show that she doesn't put a whole lot of thought into what she wears other than it just looking okay, and just being clothes that she can move around in a lot. So she doesn't wear a lot of skirts. But I also like to think that Tawny has a very girly side to her. She just doesn't have a lot of motivation to dress really girly or maintain what it takes to be girly. But it still shows in the fact that her favorite colors are pink, purple, and everything in between. And every once in a while, if she has enough motivation, she'll wear a cute dress or a skirt, just because she feels like she wants to wear something pretty, while all the rest of the time it's tank top and jeans. As for her tattoos, they were something that she got as soon as she turned 18, just because she really likes the way they look. And while she wears her hair down most of the time, because where she lives is really hot, she just decided to cut off half of it, just so it would be a lot more lightweight and cooler. So it's not really for style. I still also made sure to give her a fun, energetic pose like she's really happy to see you. Because while I've been talking about bears up until this point, the fact is, her skinwalker pelt is part coyote too. I gave her a bouncy, bubbly, very dog-like personality to go with it. She's also a bit sneaky and a bit tricky to get her way when it comes to her group, to kind of fit the personality that goes with the legend of coyotes. As for her backstory, Tawny is just shy of 20 years old when she begins her travel. But before that was the only child to her parents, but the youngest of her cousins, as well as her grandmother's favorite. As you can already tell, the bear has been a big symbol for her family. And the reason behind that is, not a lot of them know it, is because one of her first ancestors was the first skinwalker of the family. And from there, the pelt has been passed down through generations. But the only one who actually knows about it is the one who receives the pelt. And the reason behind why only that person knows about it is so that they have the free choice of whether to wear it or not. In the end, it's their choice whether to stop the tradition and burn the pelt or to keep the tradition going, without any outside influence from other family members. So when her grandmother died and she inherited the pelt, Tawny had no idea what it was. So it was a big surprise when she put it on. But before that, Tawny's life was pretty mundane. Pretty much to the point where she felt like she was on autopilot most of the time, which I think a lot of people can relate to. And she didn't have a lot of means to be able to travel or do anything exciting. She didn't live a bad life, but it was pretty boring, and she felt restless. So even before this, she actually planned to travel before, and to even live down by the ocean for a few months by herself, just to get a bit of perspective on her life. But, of course, all the careful planning that her parents made her do went straight out the window. Because who needs to plan carefully when you're literally a supernatural monster who can move faster than a car? So, with throwing caution and reason out the window, Tawny began her journey. On top of all that, each character has a different reason for traveling together, but Tawny's reason is, well, she was so used to being around her family, especially since her family was really close, that once she starts traveling alone, she starts to feel really lonely. Especially since this all started before she turned 20, and she even ended up spending her 20th birthday alone. So when she met the others who would be part of her group, she really loved the idea of traveling with them and getting to know them more. Especially when she found out pretty quickly that they were all supernaturals too. Speaking of the other travelers, up next we have Harley Smith, who, by the way, took the least amount of time to draw and the person whose design I changed the absolute least. I actually didn't change any of the characters a lot, but personality-wise, Harley definitely got a bit of an upgrade. If you've been following me for a while, you definitely know that I did both a video on skinwalkers and wendigos, which is what Harley is. Or at least what I like to call a demi-wendigo, which means he hasn't fully transformed yet. Design-wise, Harley is a sharp contrast to Tawny, being both taller and skinnier than her. And like the rest of the group, Harley is older than Tawny. He's 27 years old, though he technically stopped aging at 24. The reason behind this is during one of his camping trips during the wintertime, because yes, winter camping is a thing, he was possessed by a wendigo and ended up eating 3 people, which means that he now has the lifespans of those 3 people, as well as the appetites. It's also the reason why he's taller than he used to be too. So when designing him, I made sure to make him look malnourished and very skinny, which in turn also kind of made him look like a drug user, but that's beside the point. I also made sure to make it look like his clothes just didn't fit right, which is a lot harder than you think it would be. Either his clothes are too baggy or he's just slightly too long for them. Which again, I didn't do a very good job of that in this picture, but what's done is done. And also because Harley lives a pretty stressful life with being possessed by a Wendigo that's constantly in his head when it's not sleeping, he so ended up with gray hair. One thing I've touched upon a few times when talking to other people is that Harley is the middle child. He has a younger sister and an older brother, but he was particularly close to his younger sister. And he would also go on short camping trips in order to clear his head whenever something was bothering him, which is one of the things that resulted into how he is now. And this is quite a bad pairing because Wendigos are not creatures that like being around each other. In fact, they'll literally fight to the death if they meet another skinwalker. Gah! And they meet another Wendigo. Stop doing that, mouth. Which is a bad pairing for Harley because during his college days and throughout school, he was actually extremely extroverted. He liked being around other people and hanging out with friends all the time, which is now a really hard thing for him to do. So when meeting Tawny and the rest of them, he's actually overjoyed to be able to travel with people, since it means he's able to socialize with somebody without worrying about hurting them. And as time goes on, he definitely takes on the big brother role when it comes to Tawny. On top of that, Harley is also the group's biggest skeptic. He takes pretty much everything with a few grains of salt and tries to figure out things on his own. That being said, he's pretty detached when it comes to, well, his tribe and their traditions. While he did grow up with warnings of Wendigos, he's never really been that involved. So instead of researching old tales to look for a cure to change himself back, he decided to go with what seemed the most logical. Since Wendigos are creatures of ice and winter, he thought it would be a better idea to move down where it's really hot, which has worked up until this point. Aside from a few hiccups and being extremely lonely, up until this point he's managed for 3 years on his own that once the opportunity comes to travel with a group that he isn't in danger of hurting, he takes it, especially when he realizes just how naive and new to this Tawny is. As well as 2 veterans who have definitely been supernaturals much longer than him or Tawny. And one more thing before I forget. Those of you who have been paying attention have noticed that I didn't make a poster for Harley, despite having already finished his intro story. And this is originally because I couldn't get anything drawn for it. I think it's partially because I kind of feel like I half-assed his video, especially when comparing it to Blue and Jess's. And I also didn't want to half-ass his poster design, so I decided to save that for later. And I'll also be making an updated version of that old video, since I don't want to do my boy dirty like that. That said, moving on to the next character. And next up we have the oldest of the group, Blue. Design-wise, I didn't change Blue all that much. I just tried to make him a little bit older looking than I originally had. And before anything else, I really love how I draw Blue's eyes sometimes. In this Speedpaint, I pretty much drew them perfectly how I imagined them, though sometimes I have a bit of trouble with it. That said, even though I technically drew Tawny and Harley before the series started, Blue is the first character I came up with when I decided to make DearFellowTraveler a series. He's even inspired by the song that the series is named after. When I first designed Blue, I definitely wanted him to be very pretty. Not exactly like a pretty boy who looks too young for his age, which he technically does, but not exactly like somebody you'd see on a band cover, I guess, or like a K-pop cover. Like, I wanted him to be handsome, but I also wanted him to be pretty. Just like a pretty man. If that makes sense. Wolves are very handsome and pretty creatures, so I definitely wanted that to reflect on Blue. That's kind of why I designed his eyes like that. Kind of looking like they have mascara to mimic the whole black rim that wolves have. In the past, I had a bit of an issue making him look slender and a bit muscular at the same time, which I'm not sure why I had an issue with that, since I thought I was good at that, but I guess when your style is going through a slight change, it makes that a bit difficult. Though I'm overall happy with how I drew his figure in this one, and I'm glad it turned out so well, since he looks exactly how I always imagined him. Outfit-wise, I'm definitely always going to draw Blue in dark clothing. The animal he obviously turns the most into is a giant black wolf. And if you've seen any of the art on Tumblr or Instagram, or even watched the music video, you'll know that Blue has tattoos on both his chest and on both of his arms, which no matter what form he's in, always shows up. Same thing with his eye color. Those are just things he can never seem to get rid of no matter what form he takes. Good thing he doesn't know how to transform into a little kid, cause that would raise a few eyebrows to see a little kid tattooed. Though now that's making me want to draw him as a little kid. But I think the thing that changed the most about him was actually his personality. Since originally I wanted him to be a very vain person, and somebody who pretty much prioritizes looks over everything. Which I'm not going to say is the complete opposite of how he is right now, but it's not the main focus of his personality anymore. I think out of the whole cast, Blue is definitely the one that I changed the most personality-wise. And out of all the characters, Blue has definitely been through the most. Though how clear those memories of those events are varies. In fact, he's been around so long that he can't even remember who he was before he was a skinwalker. He has some memories, but they're pretty foggy. But like I've discussed before, he's actually being haunted by his mother, who helps bring up some memories, but he quickly forgets them after a bit. And his mother is actually the only reason why he's able to keep the same face for a long time, since he actually mimicked his appearance from her. He doesn't really remember why, but in actuality it's out of guilt of what he did. So while Blue is technically the oldest and the wisest out of the cast, he's also, well, I've definitely described him as that goofy uncle that comes to visit every once in a while. He's somebody who overall means well, but kind of screws up every once in a while. If it wasn't for his partner Jesse, he'd probably screw up a lot more. But he is overall protective of his pack, and of his mate too. So he is a good person, even if he has to do a few bad things in order to be that way. That said, Blue's mindset is a mix of what little humanity he has left, and mostly animal. What this means is that he doesn't always think like how a human would. His terms of logic don't match up with a lot of other people's. It's a bit hard to explain, though putting psychology aside, Blue is very caring and protective of his friends. He sees himself as a pack leader, which means that he needs to protect his pack. Even if he's very used to people coming and going after 300 years, and more often than not lone wolfing it, he still develops the instinct to protect those around him. And if somebody close to him does get hurt, he does get very shaken up about it, because it makes him feel like he didn't do a good enough job as pack leader. Putting Jesse aside, who he is madly in love with after 50 years, he is especially close to Tawny, though I can't really describe them as father and daughter. They're more like uncle and niece. The reason why this is hinted in the Dear Little Travelers comic I posted. So you'll have to read that in order to find out. I've also drawn a few art pieces where Jess and Blue have treated Tawny and Harley like their kids. And last but certainly not least, we have Jesse, or just Jess, however you want to pronounce his name. The guy I forgot to draw for the first speed paint because apparently I didn't think that far ahead. Though for Jesse, he's definitely the most normal looking out of all the characters, which was definitely what I wanted for him. When designing each character, I definitely wanted them to be, well, different but the same to each character. What I mean by this is, for Jesse, when I was designing him, I wanted him to look very normal. Even though he was originally born with brown eyes, his eyes turned blue when he became a skinwalker. But when compared to Blue, his blue eyes don't look off on him. So despite being taller than average, he doesn't look all that different. And personality-wise, both him and Harley are the most logical out of the group. So out of the entire group, he's also the only one who's white. And he typically looks like any other blonde Texan guy you'd see working at a store. Very mild-mannered and polite. But at the same time, if you make him mad, odds are he'll kick your ass. And if you haven't already noticed, both Jess, Blue, and Tawny have fur coats. And that's because for skinwalkers, just like a few other creatures, they need their fur coats in order to transform. So they can basically make their coats look like anything. Though I debated on whether or not to make Jesse's coat brown or to make it more of a blondish color, because the wolf he transforms into is actually a white one that has a slight yellow tint to it. So not exactly a cream color though. But I thought a white fur coat would stand out a bit too much compared to what he wears. So I still made sure to use a lot of earthy tones with his colors, just to add to the whole unassuming, very bland look. While in contrast, his eyes are very eye-catching, which is still kind of the point. Jesse's story is that 50 years ago, he was a salesman. More specifically, somebody striving to be a traveling salesman. And before he met Blue, he was also engaged to a lady named Missy. Somebody he's known since he was young. So basically the typical childhood sweetheart couple. But after he met Blue, he literally left in the middle of the night to run with the wolves. Becoming a traveling salesman was basically Jesse's way of giving himself freedom. While like Tawny, he didn't have a bad life, he felt stuck. And while he really did love Missy and he did love his brother and uncle as much as they annoyed him, he still felt like there was more out there for him. This is possibly because he didn't really realize that he was bi yet until he met Blue. Though Blue gave him an extra shove because another thing that comes to skinwalkers is that they can kind of be hypnotic. As a way of luring people into their clutches, their eyes can be very hypnotic, sort of like a siren song. And while that is a reason why Jesse latched on to Blue a bit, it's not the sole reason why they travel together, or why they're in love. Personality-wise, Jesse is a very polite person. He's very caring and kind, and he does genuinely care about people. Which is an odd thing to say considering what happened between him and Missy. I guess you could say for the first while, he was on a bit of an adrenaline high. And by the time he fully comprehended what he'd done, he felt like he was already at the point of no return. Like, what exactly was he going to say? Hey guys, sorry I ditched you all. I decided to date a wolf man. So I'm gonna go because I'm a wolf man too. That probably would not have turned out very good. But Jesse does have a bit of regret on how he broke off things. He doesn't regret being with Blue, and he does genuinely love Blue. And he has cherished their time together. But with the way he broke things off with both Missy and his family, he does have a lot of guilt over it. In short, Jesse isn't a bad person. He just made a bad decision at the time. But when all is said and done, he really is happy with the life he chose. He's happy being with Blue, and he's happy looking after the 2 monster children they ended up taking in. So yeah, those are my DearFellowTraveler characters. It was a lot of fun updating their designs and making this video, though I had to re-record a lot of this a lot of time for different reasons, which honestly took a lot out of me. But that said, I can't wait to explore more of their stories soon. I've been wanting to make my own series for a long time. Hopefully I can focus more on them soon. I'm really excited to share their stories and to explore different writing styles. Having a collection of short stories definitely helps with that, and takes off a lot of the stress when trying to tell a longer story. Because if I'm having writer's block, all I have to do is write a short story in between it. That way I can refresh my mind and get back to the longer story soon. And exploring different writing styles and different points of view definitely helps with that too. So if you're personally just starting out with making your own story, I definitely suggest practicing different writing styles, at least every once in a while. With each of my characters, I definitely wanted to explore different writing styles when telling their stories individually. And when it comes to making videos for them, I definitely want to try different video styles too. Like with Blue and Jess, how I did black and white. And for what I originally planned for Harley was to do a switch between natural colors to a special color palette. I'm not 100% sure what I want to do with Tawny's video yet, but we'll find out. And hopefully you guys will stick around for more of the story soon. So if you like this video, make sure to give it a like. And if you want to see more DearFellowTraveler content, leave a comment down below. Tell me which one's your favorite so far. And make sure to subscribe if you haven't already if you want more content from me. I've linked all my social medias down in the description if you want to check those out. And to keep you guys updated on DearFellowTraveler content, I'll leave a link to their story as well as their Instagram in a pinned comment. Also, if you want to support me, I have a Patreon, where for $2 a month, you'll see all content early before anybody else. And for $15 a month, with your first month, I'll even customize an icon for you. So, with all that said, watch out for the monsters under the bed, and I'll see all you jelly beans in the next video. Bye!